Welcome, everybody. My name is Abdullah Yunus. I am the Vice President of Advocacy and Government Relations over here at United Way of New York City. And just want to thank you all for taking the time to be with us on such short notice. We have a fantastic panel of speakers alongside us today. I also know that, I'm watching these numbers of participants go up, and I think it just really speaks to how dire our situation is here right now in New York State, in New York City. So I'm really excited for you all to really hear from the esteemed panel of folks that we have to share their perspectives and to join together in a call for our city and for our state governments to come together and really deliver on the promise of what it means to be secure in New York City, in New York State. So with that, I'll name who else is going to be on this panel with us today. We've got Grace Bonilla, who is the CEO of United Way of New York City, who will be joining us alongside Representative Grace Meng, who will also be sharing a federal perspective. Assemblymember Catalina Cruz, Henry Garrido, the Executive Director of DC 37, Senator Michelle Hinchey, who's the chair of the Committee on Agriculture at New York State, and has done quite a lot of work to prepare us on the logistical level for some of what we're about to face, alongside David Greenfield, the executive director of the Met Council on Jewish Poverty, Christine Quinn, the president and CEO of Women in Need, and Dr. Debbie Almontasser from Yemeni American Merchants Association to really share that perspective of what our small business community is facing with these cuts as well. And then finally, we will have Reverend Lawrence Aker, who is the New York clergy leader with Choose Healthy Life, and also the pastor at Cornerstone Baptist Church, who will also be speaking. Hopefully, we are going to have time for questions at the end of this panel. But if we don't, I just want you all to understand that this isn't the last time you're going to be hearing from us, right? You're seeing that there's people from all over different sectors, different parts of government, different service sectors coming together to have this conversation with you. So this is the beginning. This is not the end, and we know that we're all in this together. That said, when you have any questions, please, we would highly suggest that you use the Q&A box to submit them. This way, we'll be able to really organize that information. A little bit of housekeeping. This session is, of course, recorded. We will be circulating this link. Any overflow for all of your friends who aren't able to make it here, they can be joining us on a Facebook Live as well right now. And with that, I believe that we should get started. I'm going to throw it over to invite my boss, Grace Bonilla, our president and CEO of United Way of New York City, to start us off. Thank you so much, Grace, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Abdullah. And yes, I echo that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Grace Bonilla, and I'm the presidency of United Way of New York City. United Way of New York City works with a coalition of trusted partners to unite community power with citywide possibility. For 87 years, our priorities have been rooted in meeting New Yorkers' most urgent needs while building transformative solutions for tomorrow. Working at the intersection of government, private, and public partners to make a positive impact in our communities. At the heart of everything we do is the belief that all New Yorkers should be able to thrive with dignity, no matter their background or zip code. We're here because the foundation that feeds the city is cracking. If federal SNAP payments stall this weekend, 1.8 million people in the city of New York and over 3 million people across New York State will lose the support that keeps them fed and afloat. For anyone unfamiliar, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is the federal program that helps low-income households buy food. But SNAP isn't just a program. It's the quiet infrastructure that lets parents fill a fridge and seniors stretch a fixed income. When it falters, the strain ripples outward into our food pantries, our nonprofits, and our communities. And those systems are already at their limit. In 2025, there were 47 million visits to food pantries in New York City, which is an 87% increase since 2019. Pantries that once served hundreds now serve thousands. Shelves turn over in hours. Volunteers and staff are burnt out. Citywide, millions already live with food insecurity. In parts of East Williamsburg and West Farms, it's 1 in 3 people. Entire neighborhoods are teetering on the edge. And this isn't just about hunger. SNAP dollars uplift our neighbors. Every dollar spent through SNAP results in at least $1.50 in economic activity. Across New York State, about $7.4 billion in SNAP benefits are issued each year, generating roughly $11.5 billion in economic activity. When those dollars disappear, the shock hits every grocery store, every bodega, and every farmer's market in our neighborhoods. Earlier today, Governor Hochul announced an additional $65 million in emergency food assistance. We applaud Governor Hochul's commitment to addressing the crisis head on. We know that Mayor Adams and his administration are currently working on urgent solutions to support our communities in this time of crisis as well. However, we must go further. We require an additional $590 million to fill the immediate $655 million gap in cash payments to SNAP recipients. New York City must do its part by allocating at least $100 million towards this. That's why today we are calling for urgent coordinated action. New York State and New York City must come together to allocate $655 million in emergency funding and load directly into its EBT cards within 72 hours. EBT, electronic benefits transfer, is the existing card system that households use to receive and spend SNAP benefits. EBT is fast, it's familiar, it's multilingual. Families already know how to use it. Retailers are ready. It preserves dignity because choosing what to feed your family should not depend on which pantry is open today. This moment demands urgency, scale, and coordination. The question isn't whether we act, it's how fast we can move to protect the people who are depending on this system to work. As we think about what's at stake here in New York, it's also important to remember that these challenges started at the federal level. No one understands that better than Congresswoman Grace Meng, who has been a tireless advocate for working families and food security in Washington. Congresswoman Meng, thank you for being with us today. Please share the federal perspective.
Sure. Thank you so much to United Way and to our fearless president and CEO, Grace Bonilla, for your compassionate and smart leadership. Thank you for bringing us together. And thank you to everyone who's on this call, to the hundreds of food pantries and organizations across New York who have always been stepping up each and every day, and especially now under really dire circumstances to help feed our New Yorkers. I cannot express enough on behalf of me and the New York delegation how grateful we are to each and every one of you. And I'm here to say that we are standing with you against these horrendous cuts to our food assistance programs. I don't have to tell you, you know, and you see every day that these programs help New Yorkers put food on the table. They help our local groceries. They help New York's economy, which we need to talk more about. You cannot have a productive workday or day in school if you are hungry. I have been able to work with many of the leaders here on this call. You know, prior to this year, we have been working to expand outreach and get more money, increase opportunities, from providing more options from kosher and halal food to providing more items, from diapers to menstrual products. We were making real progress, and I want to say that I am still hopeful that we will able to get back there one day. We have to be protecting and strengthening these programs, helping people reach more communities and offer more food options, not abandoning them and defunding them or making it harder to access benefits. Food assistance has come under attack this year like never before. Brief timeline. Remember in January, we had the federal funding freeze. Then the administration canceled the local food purchasing assistance program, cut funding for the emergency food assistance program, and froze funding for the emergency food and shelter program. Then earlier this year, we got the big ugly bill, HR 1, which threatened 300,000 households across the state and the integrity of the SNAP program itself. And now we have the government shutdown. As we have seen across the headlines, food assistance is now being impacted even more. This week, we learned the administration has decided not to pay November SNAP benefits. They claim it's because of the government shutdown, but that's not true. They can't fool us. There are funds available to make sure that SNAP benefits can still be paid. And that's why during previous shutdowns, SNAP benefits have still been paid. This administration is refusing to use these funds and is instead playing games with food assistance. If this doesn't change, people won't be able to put food on the table for Thanksgiving. People will go hungry and our communities will suffer. That is unacceptable. I want to give a shout out to our New York State Attorney General Tish James, who joined, I think, about 22 other states in suing to make sure that these benefits are reinstated, and we'll get news and updates from about that soon, hopefully. 3 million New Yorkers, including almost 100,000 in my own district, rely on SNAP to put food on the table each month. Half of the people on SNAP in my district are elderly. Over a quarter are children and people with disabilities. I joined almost all of our Democrats to push back on this and tell this administration to stop playing games with SNAP and pay these November benefits. We still have not received a response. Locally, though, I know that people are stepping up. I've seen it firsthand. Last week, we partnered with City Harvest to host a food distribution event for workers impacted by the shutdown. I know the governor and her team are working around the clock to find solutions to support local food banks and pantries and New Yorkers in their times of need. We need to make it clear. We have to tell the stories that this administration is making a choice to let Americans go hungry. They are making a choice to hurt our babies and our seniors, and they're making a choice to hurt our economy. My colleagues and I have continued to push to keep the government open, fund essential programs, and move bipartisan bills that strengthen our country. But we can't do that if Speaker Johnson refuses to bring members back to work. We have not had a vote since September 29th. The American people deserve a Congress that's in Washington doing its job, not ceding power by default through dysfunction. There are 3 branches of government. Our speaker seems to have forgotten that. We have returned to Washington several times on our side under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, and we are ready at any given moment to pass a bill that doesn't take millions of people off their health care and funds the government. November 1st, you may see a little bit movement. I don't know, but I'm predicting premiums. People will find out that their premiums will be going up. They will find out even more about the lack of SNAP funding. And a lot of this impact will be in red states where their governors are not necessarily stepping up. So watch out for that in the next few days. But thank you so much to everyone in this call, to Grace, and especially to our speakers as well. I'm so appreciative of the work that you are all doing.
All right, thank you so much, Assemblymember, Congresswoman Meng. Up next is Assemblymember Cruz.
Thank you so much. Always good to be with the Graces. I think the work that Grace Bonilla and the work that Congresswoman Grace Meng do is absolutely vital to our community. I can tell you as someone who shares part of the district with Congresswoman Meng, I am and my neighbors are extremely fortunate to have such a a fighter, a no BS taken fighter in Washington for us. So thank you, Grace. And I'm looking forward to that dinner we're going to get to have eventually. So, at the state, and I want to incorporate into the things that I'm going to say a couple of the comments that I saw on the chat to make sure that folks understand the limitations and what we know so far. The money that is being lost monthly to these benefits by New Yorkers from the federal government, it's in the millions of dollars. I wish, that there was an opportunity for the state and the city council to backfill that exact amount, but we need an entire new state budget, and we passed the budget in April. And because the amount is so large, we wouldn't be able to do it unless we actually adjusted the entire state budget. The only other opportunity we have to be able to do that would be come April. I'm certainly hoping that by the time April and the new budget comes along, we're not in the same place that we are here. However, we do have an opportunity to engage the public sector, meaning us in government, along with private partners, not only to create a short stop, like a stoppage along the way to what's happening, but also to be able to support and apply pressure to the pieces of the federal government who don't want to budge, who don't want to do what's right for Americans, for New Yorkers, for our community. So right now, there are several announcements. There was an announcement earlier this week on an amount of money that the governor was moving around in the existing budget that had the flexibility to be able to fund programs like United Way and other programs that are already doing food insecurity work. Additionally, today there was another announcement. I don't know that we have enough details to know exactly how that money is going to be shelled out. We know that it's going to support these programs, to feed people, but we are waiting. I'm actually waiting for a call back from the governor's office to better understand it, because I want to be able to bring it to the community groups. The goal has to always be to get it to these hyperlocal groups who are the ones on the ground giving the support to people every day. We are also preparing our neighbors by giving them information about where these programs are, the local plus their citywide pantries, but we should not have to depend on these. Hopefully we get to a point in the next 48 hours, perhaps even before the end of the month, where the federal government begins to function the way that it needs to, so that we don't have to rely on emergency services. Having said that, we do need to do a better job of creating and supporting programs that I would say almost step in, or I don't know that the word would be usurp, but step into the role of the federal government. Because as we are seeing, programs of a public safety net realm are not safe under the current administration. We saw in the last iteration of the Trump administration, programs like what we know as the Nourish New York program actually began under his first administration. And what we did in the state, and I know my colleague who helped me deliver this, Michelle Hinchey, is here. We took it over to try to make it into a state program so that we would not have to rely on the federal government for efforts to support our pantries with New York product. We got to do more of that. Right now, my team is working, and I got to give Michelle a call because I think she'd be a perfect partner for this. But we're working on recreating other programs that are federal in nature into the state, into the state, so that we can fund it, so that we don't have to rely on them to feed our community. And so know that things are coming, but because of the nature of the budget cycle in New York, we are right now at a time where we can't really do anything financial that isn't coming from the executive, where she's reshifting amounts. I'll give a little bit of what I'm seeing at the local level before I hand it over back to you, Abdullah. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of lack of understanding of what exactly this all means for people. I represent Jackson Heights, Corona, Elmhurst, a little bit of Middle Village, and a little bit of Rico Park. And we are a community that doesn't really have many food pantries and doesn't really have a big, significant, permanent food pantry. We have some that are in nearby areas. We have some that are once a month. We don't have anything that's steady enough to be able to support people who are about to lose all their benefits and what that means. And so we are working at the almost at the ground level with information, handing it over to the PTAs, handing it over to community groups, social media, emails, etc., with information that specifically explains to folks best steps to take, what to expect, and how to and where to get the help, including, of course, our office. And I don't foresee this getting to that point, but we're also prepared to close our office again and put a food pantry. And shout out to David Greenfield, who supported, and his organization, who supported our pantry in the middle of the pandemic. We have been here before where we had to step in to literally feed people, a role that is not necessarily one electeds generally do. So we're prepared for everything, but I hope to be able to be here next week in a conversation with many of you saying we didn't need to do any of that. And that only happens through pressure to Grace, Congresswoman Meng's colleagues, because we know she wants to do the right thing, and we know that Democrats want to do the right thing, as well as pressure to our own executive saying, all right, this is great, this money is fantastic, we know you're committed, but we actually need more, and here's what we need, and here's how we need it. And know that we are here to support, we are here for information, and I will leave it at that. And thank you, Abdullah, for inviting me. Grace, thank you so much. And I love when you can get so many nonprofits, labor, and government all in the same place to agree and push for the same thing. That's what this is. That's a gigantic coalition of people who simply want to feed New Yorkers.
That's right. Appreciate that so much. And, now so many of these systems are built, the pantry system is not meant to absorb 1.8 million people in the city of New York suddenly who have been accustomed to going to grocery stores. We've already seen what has been happening in the DC area with the federal cuts as all of these different folks start coming to the pantry system, which is why we're calling so much for just direct cash assistance at this point, as far as what the immediate solution we need is. And on that note, I would like to invite Henry Garrido from DC 37 to speak to that perspective.
Thank you, Abdullah. Let me say again and echo what has been said. Thank you, Grace, for putting this together in a rather quick fashion. We are in a defining moment for this coalition and for those who have been advocating for years, for those who are in severe need. Prior to the shutdown, DC 37 had partnered with Catholic Charities to raise money for the food pantries that they had lost as a result of companies that were pro-Trump had not contributed what they normally do, and in doing so, one of the actions that we took is we went with the Central Labor Council and Catholic Charities to visit multiple food pantries and to see firsthand the need of people and the gigantic lines that are getting worse by the day. This was prior to the shutdown, and now what we see is from an incredible perspective. And as you probably know, I represent the people in the in HRA and the social services that process people for SNAP and for Medicaid, and the overwhelming fear that is taking place at the center. So people who are just completely lost, they don't know what to do. They're desperate for answers. And we do applaud what the governor has done and put in money, about $106 million, as we understand by now, but it's not enough for a program that runs over $600 million a month. And what we're finding is that people, there's just a legitimate fear. And let us not just forget that it's not just the elderly and the disabled, but it's also children who will be exposed. So I've seen and heard comments from school principals that are trying to scramble to figure out how they can put money together, and they're looking at Title I money and looking at donated commodities and things of that nature that you often use to try to offset, the impact on families. But this is real, folks, and we have an administration in the president who really doesn't care. And I applaud our delegation for standing up strong for something that is righteous and continue to do. But I think one of the problems that we need to figure out is that they're going to start the blame game to try to put us in a perspective that we say, well, why can't the state just make up the money? As the Assemblywoman said, why can't the city council just make up the money? We are in the richest city in the world. Let them just put that out. And I've seen a petition that's being circulated that basically I'm on labor that says, why don't we just sign on for the state to put every single dollar back? No, number one, I mean, obviously the issue of the lack of reimbursement has already been addressed, where the federal government specifically said that no reimbursement would take place. But number two, to what end? I mean, if even if the state for somehow, some way could come together and put together that $600 million a month for the month of November while we process, what then, right? Well, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the shutdown, but right now I'm urging and I am begging my friends in labor not to do this blame game, because um, pointing fingers of folks and saying, well, the state can just pick up the way other states is. I don't think underscores the massive need that's there in New York and the sheer breadth of what happens here. But I will say this: we are initiating a campaign to remind those Republican members of Congress, that the members in their districts that are going to suffer for this, because everybody seems to think in many instances there's been this illusion that this is this is just a democratic problem and that they're going to go to the constituency and say, here, your member of Congress did this. But if you look at the statistics and the breakdown, Congresswoman Melitakas, 14.6% of her constituency are going to be suffering, right? We see it in the Stefanik district. We see it across the state of New York. And we need to remind those Republican members that they did this and that they are perpetuated this and they have done this, in spite of the constituency. And we're going to do that. I stand in solidarity across the board, and we are strategizing what to do. And believe it or not, there's a lot of city workers who are in food stamps, working people who barely make 15, to $18 an hour, especially in the nonprofit sector that is being severely underpaid, and people who are also part timers who have to care for the children that have no child care. People tend to forget that when we did the increase of the minimum wage to $18 an hour, there are 10,000 people who were below the $18 an hour in a family of four, and they were the sole providers in many instances. So we're looking at across the board people in all areas, not just the elderly and young people and children, but also working people and the working poor that are being mostly affected by that. So we stand in solidarity. We have some plans of actions that we're going to do, but I urge you all to stick together, because as this problem becomes worse and worse, they are hoping that we break apart and the blame game begins. And we're not going to stand for that. We are not going to stand for that. And we're going to call a spade a spade. So I am proud to be part of this coalition, and count on me as we move forward on this
Thank you.
righteous fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry. And you mentioned so many different constituencies that are impacted by this, and I think there's one that is often forgotten, and that is our agricultural workers, that is our farmers upstate, that is our communities upstate as well. And to that end, we have Senator Hinchey with us now, who's going to speak to that perspective. So thank you so much, Senator, for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, to everyone at United Way and to everyone on the call for all that you do. Truly, thank you for being here and for your care about this moment and your care for your community. As Henry said, I mean, this is a statewide problem. It's a nationwide problem, but talking about New York, this is a statewide problem. For those who don't know me, I'm Senator Michelle Hinchey. I represent the 41st District, and that covers a good portion of the Hudson Valley and the Catskills. And we have robust agricultural communities, lovely, beautiful farmland, and we also have the cities of Hudson and the city of Kingston. And in our district, just under 50,000 people are going to be impacted by these SNAP cuts. We represent just over 300,000. That's a significant number of folks in our district in upstate New York. And those numbers only increase when you go in other places around the rest of the state. We have right now, while the state of New York has been investing in getting people food, like the full expansion of universal school meals to make sure that all of our kids have at least 2 meals a day. And while we've created with Assemblymember Catalina Cruz, the Nourish New York program to get healthy farm fresh food into our food banks and food pantries, while we have made this a priority, Republicans in DC and the Trump administration have done exactly the opposite. And if that doesn't tell you who's on the right side of history and what values you want to align with, if that doesn't show that clearly and starkly, I don't know what else does. And from the agricultural side, and I think someone mentioned this in the chat, I mean, the dollars that we're losing in these communities is astronomical. And our farmers often get paid or participate with our food banks and food pantries to provide healthy, locally sourced, nutritious food. If people cannot buy that, they also send those into stores, right? If you cannot buy that with SNAP benefits, those markets close. And we have to recognize and call out how unconscionable these choices are by the federal government and by the majority members. One thing that we have not talked much about is that there's a role for minority members in New York to play here. And so if you have minority members in your communities, I'm looking at Staten Island, Brooklyn, any of your friends on Long Island, Assembly Republicans and Senate Republicans, state Senate Republicans should be engaged in this fight. They should hear from us, they should hear from you, that they should be calling their colleagues, their Republican majority members, to put pressure on them to make some changes and to make some choices. They have a role here. They want to pass the buck all the time and say that it's New York, we have nothing to do with this. That is untrue. This is their moment to shine. So please engage them. Let them know that what is happening in their communities too is completely unconscionable. And we have, I'll speak again for kind of the rest of the state and upstate New York, something that people don't often think about are food deserts in rural areas as well. We have an entire communities and folks that live right next to farms, right next to where our food is growing, who don't have access to the food that is growing right next door. And so people all over depend on SNAP benefits to actually provide their meals. And there are so many misconceptions. Henry spoke about a number of them, but there are so many misconceptions about the SNAP program, right? I mean, just under half of our SNAP beneficiaries are people who are working full time, who are not making enough money to keep pace with rising food costs and utility costs and housing costs and everything else. About 7% of New York SNAP recipients are people with disabilities. About 1 million children in New York are on SNAP, and over 600,000 seniors. And especially in rural communities like ours, where we have an aging population in rural areas, a lot of those seniors don't have access to food, and SNAP is one of the only things that can actually help them cover the costs. Because we too have a housing crisis and our utility prices are skyrocketing. We have to address all of these areas, but we have to stand united together in this fight and in this conversation, because this is sadly one of those things that unites our entire state. And so this coalition is really beautiful in this moment of absolute darkness. And I'm so proud to stand with you shoulder to shoulder to call attention to the impacts that are happening all around our state and to make sure that we put pressure on the folks who can make a difference. And those are Republican state senators and assembly members and Republican members in Congress to pressure the Trump administration and USDA to release the funds that they have access to that could solve this right now. I'll end with this. In every other government shutdown, Republican and Democrat, SNAP benefits have continued because we all agree that access to food should not be political and it should not be partisan. We have to stand behind that message and make sure that we are fighting for every single person across our state and in our communities to have access to the food that they have a right to and that they deserve. Thank you all for standing up with us, and I'm so proud to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. Like so well said, you're getting so many hearts in the chats. So, you're onto something. And that's, hunger does not care what your party affiliation is, what your creed is, where you're located, what age you are. And to that end, we have with us David Greenfield from the Met Council, who has an organization that supports folks from all over New York City, regardless of their background. So I'd love for him to share his perspective as well as far as how communities are being impacted by this right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's extraordinary to be here today. I want to thank United Way. They're really the only ones who could bring this tremendous group of people together. Thank you so much for your leadership, Grace, Abdullah. Thank you, Senator, Assembly Member, and of course, everybody's favorite member of Congress, Congressmember Grace Meng. Appreciate you, and Chris and Debbie for your work, and Reverend as well. Proverbs tell us to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. And I think that's really what we're trying to do today, which is that, when we talk about the numbers, if you look at the average income of a SNAP recipient in New York, it's approximately $1,100 a month. I'm going to say that again, $1,100 a month. That's not money. You can't live on $1,100 a month anywhere in New York City. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that even upstate, Senator, you can't live on $1,100 a month. That's just not feasible for people. And that's what's happening over here. And I think the point of clarity, and I want to talk about what's happening in our neighborhoods, but the point of clarity is that this is our money. We send our tax dollars to Washington, D.C. They took our money. They stored billions of those dollars, and they're choosing not to release those dollars. So, when we talk about the blame game, let's be clear about what's happening is they stole our money. We gave them money for the purposes of helping our neighbors, and they're refusing to do so. And that's really who should be blamed. It's DC that should be blamed, not New York City Hall, not Albany, nothing like that. When we talk about the work that we're seeing, I think folks have to understand that since the pandemic, the increase in our pantries, and I see hundreds of pantry leaders who are on here today, is approximately 100%. We see a double need, and the funding has actually gone down since the pandemic. So we see twice as much need and an incredible drop. Just this week alone, we've seen around a 15% increase in people who are coming in, who are desperately seeking for food. We supply around 200 pantries across New York City, mostly with kosher and halal food. And I will tell you that the stories that we're hearing are heartbreaking. We had a mom who came in literally just this morning. I called one of our pantries in the Bronx, and a mom came in. Her name is Aaliyah. She's 41 years old. She has 3 kids, including a small baby who's currently in the hospital. And she came in and asked for extra food because she's going to be in the hospital next week with her kid, and said, hey, look, I don't know what's going to happen if I don't get my SNAP benefits. These are our friends. These are our neighbors. These are children. And that's what we're dealing with. And so the impact that we have right now is immense. I think what we need at this time is we need people to step up however they can. If you have a few more bucks, support your local food pantry. Corporations, they should be helping us absolutely as well. If you have some extra time, please volunteer and come help us out. And I think that the most important point that was made is it's not just impacting these SNAP beneficiaries, it's impacting farmers, it's impacting workers on farms. And I'm sure that you're going to hear from Dr. Debbie in a few minutes about how it's impacting small business owners. I'm sure Chris is going to talk about the people who are the most vulnerable who are being impacted. This has an impact on everyone across New York State and really across the country. And 2 final things I'm going to say. They're trying to divide us. Don't let them. They are the ones who manufactured a crisis. There shouldn't be a crisis here. There are literally billions of dollars in federal reserves that have been set aside just for this, and they're choosing not to tap into it so they can pit us against each other. We can't let them do it. But the final thing that I will say, and I think this is the most critical point, is it's certainly not our fault. It's not New York City's fault or Albany's fault. It's DC's fault. But I think the final point is that this should really be a clarion call. And we need to keep working together with United Way, with Abdullah, with all the leaders over here. And we have to realize is No one's coming to save us anymore. This administration is out to get us. They've cut billions of dollars in funding. I'm sure Chris can tell you, I can tell you, just this year alone, we've lost $3 million in federal funding. No one is coming to save us. And so when it comes time for the next state budget and city budget, we have to say, look, we can't rely on the feds anymore. The feds are not going to be here. We have to take care of ourselves, our own communities, our own neighbors, and we have to reprioritize what's important. And we have to know that the most important thing are people who are struggling. And people who are struggling, by the way, are not people who are different than you. They're just like you. And they're folks who, quite frankly, in many cases are embarrassed and they're uncomfortable to wait online. And that's why one of the things that we've incorporated is we started using a digital food system to try to have food with dignity. But in the end of the day, no one is saving us. We have to save ourselves. And that's why we're so grateful for United Way for leading this effort. I'm David Greenfield, and I'm CEO of Met Council. I'm privileged to be part of this tremendous multicultural, multi-faith coalition. Thanks for having me.
Those are some inspiring words. No one's coming to save us, right? And I think so many of our New Yorkers have known that reality, even before this crisis. And to that end, we have Chris Quinn here with us today, who represents Women in Need, and Women in Need has been working with some of our most vulnerable populations that exist at those intersections of multiple layers of oppression, multiple crises. So please take it away, Chris.
Thank you. Chris Quinn, President and CEO of WIN, Women in Need. We are the largest providers of shelter, services, and permanent supportive housing to homeless families with children in the 5 boroughs. We house 7,000 people a night, give or take, half of whom are children. The average age of someone in shelter in New York City is 5 years old. 98% of our clients, 98% of the people in family shelters receive SNAP. In each of our shelters, on top of SNAP, we have food pantries to help our parents have enough nutritious food, because the SNAP, as great as it is, doesn't go far enough. And on top of that, our clients go out and utilize the other food pantries and soup kitchens that are out there. So we need to understand that even before this, on SNAP, families were still food insecure. So this is really going to be kind of a triple wallop. To put it into perspective, if we were to take the amount of money our families get a month from SNAP, it's $1.7 million. It's $400,000 a week. Since we knew really and became focused at the beginning of the week that SNAP was going to run out on Saturday, I began fundraising to try to raise $400,000 additional to what we already had budgeted a week, every week, until this shutdown is over, or until we force the Department of Agriculture and the president to spend the money. And I've raised some money, but it feels a little bit, like bailing out a sinking ship with a spoon. It is ultimately not going to get us all of the way, though it will be on some level helpful. What will get us all of the way is to, as has already been said, hold Washington accountable. And we do that in New York by starting off by holding the marginal Republican members in the 5 boroughs and outside of the 5 boroughs accountable. Because as has been said, this is going to hurt in many cases and in many states, red districts more than it is going to hurt blue districts. This is bad policy, but it's bad politics. If you're a Republican member of Congress and you want to get reelected, and we need to remind people of that every day. We also need to be grateful to the governor for what she has done. She has been quick. She has been decisive, declaring a state of emergency, as United Way and WIN and so many advocates pushed for, allows her to circumvent some of the contracting protocols, et cetera, which anybody who's on this call has been in government, we know that those can bog things down. So that was tactically smart of her. But we also need to keep asking the governor for more money, and we need to ask for those of us in the 5 borough, the mayor, for more money. I heard that the mayor was going to step forward with some money today. It was not, from what I was hearing, it was going to be a small amount, maybe in the range of like $5-10 million. And I understand the political perspective of, if the city and state pick this up, there is no pressure on Washington, but this is real life. And these are 3,600 children at Wynn who are not going to have enough food to eat. Unfortunately, we have too many babies, too many newborns in shelter, and they could end up in a situation with not having the formula that they need to stay alive. So the message we need to send is this is a life or death situation, and nowhere probably is it more acute than New York City. We are on the verge of a humanitarian crisis if something isn't done. And it should be done by every level of government. And by doing so, even when there may be budget deficits coming up, you make a point to Washington of just how critical and just how life-saving this program is. So I thank all of you for your hard work. You know, if you're, as David said, if you're looking to do something, go to WIN's website, winnyc.org, 2 N's, and make a contribution to our SNAP emergency fund. We've gotten through bad things. We will get through this as a city. We know more than anything about the people of the city of New York. They are resilient. You know, we have moms who wake up every morning who are domestic violence survivors, who are struggling having been evicted, who are struggling with mental health or substance misuse issues, yet they get up every day, make their children breakfast, get their children dressed, get them off to school, where last year we sent 39 high school seniors off to college from shelter. So we know about New Yorkers, homeless and low-income people know about resilience. We will get through this. We shouldn't have to, but with efforts like this, we will. And I just thank you all for being such tough, committed New Yorkers who are leading the way.
Absolutely right. We are going to get through this, and you know, we are going to be able to fill in these gaps in the short term ourselves. We've got Louisiana, Virginia, Vermont. These states have also been able to put together the funds necessary to fill the immediate gap that we have. And what we're looking at right now is 3 million New Yorkers across the state, 1.8 million. Googling on November 2nd, November 1st, what is the nearest pantry to me? And that is something that is truly terrifying. But we can get through this when we all work together and we continue to put pressure on our elected officials, our mayor, our governor, in order to continue to put resources into filling in these holes that we have as immediate needs. We also have somebody mentioned in the chat asking what are the advocacy opportunities here as well. We will be sharing a phone to action. It's all over the chat somewhere. This is a way for us to be reaching out to our elected representatives to let them know that, hey, this is what our ask is. We want this hole of 655 million right now to be filled while we figure out what comes next. Now we're going to ask Dr. Debbie Almontaser, who represents the Yemeni American Merchants Association, to give us the perspective of the economic impacts here. Right, this is also an irrational thing that is happening right now. Every dollar that is spent is actually results in $1.54 back directly into the New York economy. So what is it that's even happening here? And how is this impacting our other stakeholders?
Thank you so much, Abdullah, and thank you so much, Grace, and everyone who's on this call, the Congresswoman and Assembly members that are here. My colleagues, David and I were just together this morning, and here we are. This has been the conversation of the day, and sadly is going to be probably for the next several weeks until this issue gets resolved. My name is Dr. Debbie Almontaser, and I am one of the co-founders of the Yemeni American Merchants Association, and I serve as the vice president of the organization. As many of you know, the organization was founded during the first Trump administration, shortly after the travel ban was announced, with the infamous bodega strike of 1,000 stores striking, shutting down, and coalescing in Brooklyn Borough Hall for one of the largest protests in the city of New York, basically demanding their rights to be seen and heard and not live in the shadows. As an organization that is developed to support them and support their families, as well as the communities, the vibrant, beautiful communities that they exist in, it's been really difficult. And, you know, as you all know, during the pandemic, the bodegas and delis were actually the lifeline of so many communities. And we are now at another pivotal moment where we're seeing what is actually going to unfold, which will not only impact the bodegas, specifically economically, but also their neighbors who rely on them, who come in and spend their SNAP benefits in their stores, and now they won't have anything. And you know, we've had a number of bodega owners who've for years kept black books where they actually give families groceries, and at the end of the month they're able to pay it. But right now that doesn't look very optimistic, and we are so concerned right now for their neighbors as well as for the bodegas themselves, the economic impact that it's going to have on them to be able to keep their stores open, to pay their rent, to pay their electricity and utilities. It's going to be really, really challenging, and they're already feeling challenged just by being a small business in New York City with the high rent increases and what have you. And so another concern that has actually been raised through the Yama Connected businesses is the fear of actually retail theft, the increase of retail theft, and even violence. And so this is something that right now many of our Yama Connected businesses are thinking about and trying to figure out what are we going to do. And you know, one of the things that we did as an organization during the pandemic was actually do food distribution. We partnered with the Met Council and a host of other, you know, the Food Bank of New York, and also the mayor's office, where we were actually giving out from the organization itself. And, you know, one of the things that's really important to note, and somebody has noted it earlier, is the stigma that many individuals in the AAPI community experience during this. And this is something that we have to take into consideration. And one of the things that Yama did was actually do home deliveries to families who did not feel comfortable being on lines. And so one of the things that we are now going to be working on is actually working with mutual aid groups in our neighborhoods to donate from some of our supermarket owners and some of our merchants who actually are able to support in whatever way they can to make sure that we fill in those gaps and support our neighbors. So we are willing, you know, and able to work with all of you. You know, I have faith that we are going to get through this. We are New Yorkers. New Yorkers are tough. New Yorkers don't give up. And I know that we're going to take care of all of our children, all of our vulnerable families. And we just have to stick to this fight and work collaboratively. So I'm really honored to be a part of this coalition and look forward to continuing to brainstorm and find ways that we can actually fill this important gap.
Thank you, Dr. Debbie. You know, faith has been brought up a couple of times on this call, and I think at times like this, more than any other, for better or worse, we find ourselves, when institutions start failing us, we find ourselves reaching for what is consistent, what is familiar, what is community, and this is one of those times, and for that, you know, to that end, I want to invite Reverend Lawrence Aker to speak to his perspective. Reverend Aker represents 30 different churches all over New York State who have been involved in service delivery around healthcare, around food, and we're just very excited to hear from you as well, sir.
Thank you, Abdullah, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me just say that it's already been mentioned how high the stakes are, but indeed, once you think about it, this is marathon weekend in New York City. We have over 55,000 runners who are coming from more than 150 countries. And while they're coming here, we are in a crisis. And the goal is to meet the SNAP gap. And that gap can be filled with $549 million with our elected officials taking that money out of emergency funds and actually loading that onto EBT cards. That would help families, the 1.8 million New Yorkers that we are projecting, that we're talking about. But that is a plan that will meet the need. It will get them through this month. And November, we know, is Thanksgiving. The holidays are upon us. As you mentioned, Faith, the Advent season is upon us. And so it is urgent. It is a crisis that we have this gap filled. I'm so excited and encouraged to hear from the numerous colleagues that are on this call today that we all see the clarion call must be answered, and I believe it will be answered. We talked about being New Yorkers and being resilient, but this is a time for us to fill this gap. There's an author, Mr. Osnos, who has a book that talks about where we are financially across the United States. He just simply surmises that it has become the haves and the have-yachts. Either you are wealthy or you are uber wealthy. But once again, for the 1.8 million New Yorkers that we are focusing on right now, this urgent matter, we want to get that gap filled. So $549 million. I'm contacting my elected officials. We'll be doing turkey drives. Abdullah mentioned our 30 churches with United Way from upstate and downstate. We're going to be working as well with our congregants at Cornerstone in Brooklyn, where I pastor. Our food pantry is overwhelmed. It's overloaded. We do it on Tuesdays. The lines are snake wrapped down the streets. And so this is a time for the church to be the church, but it's also a time for New Yorkers to be New Yorkers and show that resilience. And so let's be adamant that we fill this SNAP gap.
Thank you, Reverend Aker. I have to say, I am so incredibly moved by the partners that have joined us today. This is the beginning. 3 million New Yorkers across the state are depending on us to get this right. And we have 72 hours to make sure that we are taking all the actions necessary. Our team at United Way is at the ready to convene and to push and to advocate for New Yorkers to have a dignified existence. And this is a moment of urgency. Ultimately, the longer the shutdown goes on, the more we'll have to look beyond emergency fixes. We need our corporate partners and philanthropy to join us on this towards the structural supports that keep food relief systems stable. That means exploring tools like revolving funds for food infrastructure investments and new public-private partnerships. But right now, I am urging all of you to stand with us to make sure that on November 3rd, November 4th, and for Thanksgiving, New Yorkers are not waiting on lines, waiting to feed their families, but instead are getting the dignified benefits that they deserve, and that our taxpayer dollars are being used the way they should be, and that our businesses are kept thriving. If we act now, we can prevent a humanitarian crisis and keep our emergency food network standing. Thank you all for joining us, and stand with us as we fight this fight together. And like Reverend Aker said, we're New Yorkers and we will get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you to all of our speakers as well. Unfortunately, we're not able to get to the questions, but this is all recorded. We will be getting back to you with more and more action items. But right now, take those phone actions and reach out to your people, your representatives. Accountability is the name of the game, and there's not enough of it going around right now. And we together can make this happen for us. So thank you everybody for being on with us, and stay tuned.